Hi guys! Today we're going to talk about all the books that I read in February. Sorry this is so late. My filming schedule got kind of thrown off by my Boston trip, but we're just gonna do it. We're just gonna do it. It may be the middle of March, but oh well. February was a really weird reading month for me. Like, one of my goals for the month was to read a bunch of romances, but just a lot of them that I was picking up just were not hitting for one reason or another. So that was kind of a bummer. I also had 3 DNFs this month, which is incredibly rare for me. I think at this point in my reading life, I've been pretty good about picking up books that I know I'm gonna like, but 3 in 1 month might be some sort of record for me. So we're gonna start with those. I'm just gonna briefly talk about the book and why I DNF'd it. The first 2 are romances, like I just said. I kind of just had a hard time picking up ones that I was really jiving with. So the first one is The Royals Next Door by Karina Hall? I don't know. This one is very much inspired by, like, Harry and Meghan, and, like, there's a royal couple that is kind of on the outs with the royal family, and they move to this small town in Canada. It's actually a very, like, isolated island, and they move in next door to this teacher named Piper, and it kind of upends her life. She gets to know these royals, but she also gets to know their bodyguard, and I'm assuming romance ensues. I never quite got that far. This was just, like, too reminiscent of Harry and Meghan, and I feel like with the documentary and the memoir that just came out, I'm kind of a little burnt out on that, and I got to this point where she was having dinner with them, and literally everything they were talking about felt like Harry and Meghan, and it was just, I was not engaged with it. I was just kind of over it. So I don't know if this is like a good, cute romance because I didn't really get to that part. Her and the bodyguard kind of start off on the wrong foot. But yeah, I don't know. I just wasn't clicking with this one, so I put it down about like 25% of the way through. The next romance is Donut Fall in Love by Jackie Lau. I actually got like 60% of the way through this one, and I think this one is on me. It's not bad, but I've said recently that I kind of just don't care for celebrity romances. Like, I don't love the issues that come up with that. It's just not interesting to me. Or I just feel like it's very eye-rolly. I don't know. I don't love reading about fake celebrities, I guess. And I didn't even get to the point of this where, like, I thought I was gonna really like it. The celebrity in this case is the guy, Ryan. He's an actor, and he's gonna be on this, like, very much kind of nailed it type of baking show called Baking Fail. He gets this professional baker to teach him how to bake, and romance ensues. I just didn't really, like, super click with the romance. It was fine, but, like, I don't know. Again, I just don't love the issues that tend to arise in a romance that involves a famous person. Third act conflict is always kind of the same thing, and I don't love it. I just wasn't feeling the spark with this one. So I didn't even get to the baking competition part of this, which was a bummer. I didn't realize it was gonna be like quite so far in, but whatever. This also deals a lot with parental death and like grief, which is kind of heavy for a romance. So definitely be aware of that going in before you pick this up. Again, I did get it a little bit over halfway through this one. And usually when I get to that point, I do try to finish it, but I wasn't itching to pick it up anymore. It felt more like a chore, and I'm trying to be better about DNFing books rather than like suffering through them. So I don't think this is like an objectively bad book. It's just not for me. And this last one has nothing to do with content and like everything to do with my own tastes. I wish I was the type of person that could read an anthology or a short story collection and be super engaged, but I just had a really hard time with this one because every time I started feeling like I was clicking with the story and I had like my bearings with what it was about, it ended and switched to another story. And I don't know. I want to be a short story girly, but I don't think it's in the cards for me. So I ended up DNFing A Phoenix First Must Burn. This is, again, a short story anthology with a lot of really good authors and like ones that I want to check out more of, and I thought this would be a good way to kind of introduce myself to their writing. I got like 5 or 6 stories into this before I was just kind of like, again, it felt like a chore. I was trying to read one every day and I just wasn't looking forward to it. I did, however, like the one by Elizabeth Acevedo. That one was probably my favorite in this one so far. Her writing was just really pretty, and that was the one I felt like more engaged with kind of right away compared to the rest of them. Again, I don't think this is bad by any means. It's just not for me, so I put it down. Now onto the books that I actually read and finished in February. First up is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This is a big one. Starting my official journey into Brandon Sanderson. I've read Warbreaker in the past and I quite enjoyed that one, and I decided I wanted to go and start reading his books in chronological order. I know people don't usually recommend that. They say to start with Mistborn, but I've heard that his writing only gets better, and I'd really rather start kind of at his most mid books and then have it get better as time goes on. And I didn't even think this one was horrible. It's definitely not the worst fantasy book I've ever read, and I did enjoy the fact that it was a standalone that was told in 550 pages. It felt very digestible. But I will say, compared to Warbreaker, I did like Warbreaker a little bit more. The ideas just felt a little bit more developed. I think the magic system made more sense in this one. I was describing it to my boyfriend, and it seems it's very glyph based, and the way I was describing it, he was like, oh, it's like coding, and I'm like, I don't know anything about that, but yeah, sure. So it made more sense to me just the way it was explained than the magic system in Warbreaker did, but I think the story itself was a little less engaging, or maybe just the way that it was told. This story is a multi-POV fantasy that follows several characters kind of living their lives in and around this city called Elantris, which used to be sort of the shining beacon of this country. It was full of kind of supernatural adjacent citizens. This thing happened where you could literally turn into an Elantrin overnight. You became marble-esque, near immortal, and could perform magic. And so if that happened to you, you moved to Elantris. But this thing happened that cursed the city or its citizens, and that transformation basically started making people into lepers. Their skin became really mottled. Anytime they hurt themselves, that pain never healed, and eventually the accrual of pain from living, everyday lives would drive the citizens crazy. So the gates were shut, and literally every time someone turned into an Elantrin, they were just thrown in and was good luck. And this new capital arose kind of in the shadow of Elantris, and that's where most of the action of this book takes place. One of the characters we follow is a princess who is engaged to the crown prince basically of this country, except he turns into an Elantrin overnight, and she doesn't know that. She just shows up and suddenly he's dead. So she has to navigate this political sphere on her own. We also follow a really righteous priest figure who is very much against Elantris and everything it stands for, and he is using religion as a political tool, basically to help overtake this country. We also follow the prince character, who is now an Elantrin and navigating what that means in this day and age after the fall of this society. It's interesting, but it's very tell and not show. We are told characters are really smart and witty. We are told they're good leaders, but I don't know. I don't know if it's a byproduct of its shortness or what. The priest kind of felt like the most developed character, which was frustrating because he was someone that in real life I would hate. So it was very frustrating to read his points of view and again have him be sort of the most fleshed out character. But I think Brandon Sanderson probably just really liked what he was doing with that character, and it was interesting. So I'm rambling now, but yeah, as far as I hear this book is oh, this is Brandon Sanderson's worst book. It was not a bad book. A little bit slow in parts, but I thought it had a really good ending, and while the characters weren't my favorite, it was fine. It was good. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I did a total 180 and picked up a romance book, The Fastest Way to Fall by Denise Williams. I previously read another book of hers called How to Fail at Flirting, and I really liked that one. And I will say I didn't like this one quite as much. This one follows a journalist. She's writing for a magazine, and she and a coworker of hers tackle these lifestyle apps that are supposed to kind of connect you with a personal trainer who helps you make better decisions about your health. It's not necessarily weight loss, it's health, lifestyle advancement. And our main character, Britta, gets paired with a personal trainer who is also like the co-founder of the company that she's reviewing in her articles, though he doesn't know that she's reviewing their service. But they hit it off, and what starts as like interactions within the app becomes texting, becomes they meet in real life and start like working out together in real life, and, you know, sparks fly. This has a lot to do, obviously, with working out, eating healthy, making healthy decisions. It touches briefly on like eating disorders and like unhealthy eating habits, so that might be potentially triggering for you. I was fine, but like I also just didn't care. Unfortunately, like, that is just not something I'm very passionate about, so it didn't really do a lot for me, like, in that regard. Like, the changes that this character was making to her life, it was just kind of like, it felt like I was reading a blog article, I guess, about it. So this also sort of played into the I don't really love romances about famous people thing. Not quite as bad as Do Not Fall in Love, but where the guy is like a CEO, he's semi-famous, and that becomes an issue. And again, the types of issues that just arise from that are not entertaining to me. So I gave this one a 3 out of 5. I much preferred her other book, but I'm willing to pick up other books by Denise Williams. I think the main thing with this one is just the whole like plot being about working out and stuff just didn't do much for me. So it might be a 5-star read for somebody else. I don't think it was poorly written or anything. Then I needed to dive a little bit back more into fantasy because that's my comfort zone. That's what I prefer. And so I picked up a fantasy romance called Paladins Grace by T. Kingfisher. This is the first in a trilogy, and it was so good. I've read other books by T. Kingfisher. This might be my favorite. It ticked all of my boxes when it comes to fantasy romance. It was cute, but had a little bit of spice. The characters were just super relatable, which is weird to say because one of the main characters is literally like a paladin whose god has died, and he's like searching for purpose in his life again, like after being left like bereft. I don't know. It was just, these characters are like in their 30s and kind of exhausted, but like they find each other and like they're just so comfortable around one another, and it was just so cute and pure and wholesome. But I don't know, sorry, this is one of those books that like if I loved it less I could talk about it more, because I just feel like I'm reduced to like rambling and like strange noises when I talk about this book, but it was just so cute. Our other main character is a perfume maker, and she and our paladin have sort of dark, sad things in their past. And again, once they like cross each other's paths, they just find comfort in one another. And their first interaction is so funny. I was dying. So I don't want to spoil that, but this book just has a lot of heart, a lot of humor, and some cute sexy times too. So it had everything, and I loved it, and it was a super fast read, and I'm super eager to pick up the next two. I believe each one follows a different couple, so it's kind of like a romance series, or a traditional romance series rather, in that regard. We're not following the same couple through the 3 books, but there's also a really interesting mystery at the center of this that I think is going to be kind of tackled in the next couple books as well. There's like a murder mystery thing happening, and we learn more about it by the end of this one, but not everything is solved. So I'm very eager to see where that element goes as well. If you're looking for a fantasy romance with an actual plot and really fun, relatable characters, I definitely recommend this book. And I gave it 5 stars, if that wasn't obvious. Then I swung back over to contemporary romance and picked up my arc of Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. And listen, Ali Hazelwood is not doing anything new with this book. I think if you've read one Ali Hazelwood, you know the types of tropes and stuff that she really likes. It's familiar. But there's a comfort in picking up a book and getting exactly what you're expecting, I think. And for that reason, I actually really liked this one. I thought the writing was actually really good. I have a hard time sometimes really engaging with romance books just because the characters feel very flat or like surface level, and that's not the case with Ali Hazelwood. Her main characters have like a really funny, relatable voice, and like just like the narrative style is always really engaging and funny, and I thought that applied to love theoretically as well. This romance follows two physicists. One is a theoretical physicist and one is an experimental physicist, which apparently in the world of science, like, they butt heads a lot. They have just very different takes on the world of physics. That provides a lot of fun tension between the two. Our female main character, Elsie, is also a, like, fake girlfriend for hire. Like, there's an app, kind of Tinder-esque, but, like, she's only pretending to be these people's girlfriends for certain events and stuff like that. And her favorite client is actually the brother of the main love interest, Jack. That also causes some tension because Jack thinks that Elsie is dating his brother, but, like, he has feelings for her, and it's a whole mess. It also takes place in Boston, which is semi-close to me. I've been there, and it's a lot of fun to read about a place that you've been. So, I don't know, I just had a lot of fun with this one. I thought it was well written. It definitely follows similar beats as her other books, but it did feel more different from her other two than, like, Love on the Brain felt from The Love Hypothesis. So if that was a big critique of yours for those two, I think this one is still worth picking up. Again, familiar tropes and beats, but still very fun. And Elsie and Jack felt very different from Allie Hazelwood's previous protagonists. For that reason, I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, and I think this was my favorite contemporary romance that I read this month. Then I picked up Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. This is the much anticipated sequel to Ninth House. I pre-ordered this book and it came out in, like, the beginning of January, and it took so long for it to get to me, but it finally did, and I picked it up pretty much right away. And oh my gosh, what a ride this book was. I'm glad I read Ninth House, like, right before this one. I don't know if it would have hit quite the same if I hadn't, but I don't know what I can say about this book without spoiling anything. So I'm just going to talk about the series as a whole. We follow Alex Stern, who has a very dark past. She grew up with the ability to see ghosts, and that really messed her up. So she had a very fraught and dramatic childhood into her teenage years, and something really horrible happened that caught the attention of some people at Yale University. They have these secret societies that practice, like, basically magic. It's a lot of, like, occult happenings, and one society in particular is supposed to be kind of like the, like, police, basically, to the other societies. They're supposed to, like, make sure that nobody, like, no civilians are getting hurt and that nothing super horrible is happening with these rituals and stuff. And so Alex gets invited to join Ninth House, which is this other society. And in her freshman year, she's mentored by this other student named Daniel Arlington, aka Darlington. In the first book, we get both of their perspectives. It flips back and forth, and it kind of leads up to this point that really changed the trajectory of her experience at Yale. And this book really follows that plot line in particular, but both books have had sort of murder mystery things at the center of them as well also happening, and I think Leigh Bardugo juggles those pretty well. The ending of Ninth House was not my favorite. It felt very, like, mustache twirly, kind of comical. This one I liked better in that regard, and, like, the main plot of this book I thought was also, like, very engaging, and I could not put it down. So I actually liked this one better than Ninth House. I don't know if that's a popular or unpopular opinion where it just came out, but I had a fun-ass time with this book, and it was a ride. Side note, I kind of think this would make a really good TV show. Like, this needs to get adapted. It would be so cool. But yeah, anyways, I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, and the long wait for book 3 begins. As fun as that book was, it's kind of dark, so I picked up a much lighter, fluffy read, and this is, like, pinnacle peak, like, cozy fantasy right now, and I'm so glad that I finally read it, and that is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. In the story, we follow an orc who used to be part of, like, a mercenary band, but she's put down her weapons and decided she wants to open a coffee shop in this town that's never heard of coffee before. So this really feels a lot like a, like, shop simulator where, like, she finds a property that she's gonna have her coffee shop at. She has to go find materials to renovate the place. She finds people to help her out, and she makes these really deep connections with people in the community, and Just the nature of this collecting of materials and resources and putting them all towards her dream, again, just felt so much like a simulator game in like the coziest, most comforting way. So, I mean, I don't know what to say about this book that hasn't already been said. Again, this is sort of the start of the cozy fantasy trend we're seeing right now, and I think it absolutely lives up to that. There is still a plot. Like, I feel like a lot of people have complained, if they have anything to complain about this book, it's that like, the stakes aren't very high. Even though that's sort of the point, like, there is still, like, a couple scenes in here where I'm like, oh, shit. Like, she's battling certain roadblocks to her dream, and I think that was done really well and still maintained that cozy feel. So I gave this one, I believe, 5 stars. Like, maybe 4.5. It was really fun and, again, super comforting, and I absolutely loved it. And I can't wait for the prequel that comes out later this year. Then I picked up Olivia Blake's Alone with You in the Ether. This is the Waterstones edition. And this was okay. I have feelings about Olivia Blake that are really complicated. There's been a lot of hype surrounding her and her writing in the last couple of years, and I went into the Atlas 6 expecting to be absolutely blown away and walking away feeling kind of meh about it. And I was hoping where this one was like a love story and it didn't have those speculative elements necessarily, that I would like connect with it a little bit more. Because one of the complaints about the Atlas 6 is a bunch of like hot people just standing around thinking philosophical thoughts and being hot. So this one felt like it was going to be more of a character study or like a relationship deep dive. And in that regard, it was. But like, it felt so disconnected in a way. Like, it felt very observational. Like, I didn't feel super connected to these characters in the way that I was hoping to be. So we follow Reagan and Aldo, and Reagan works in a museum, and Aldo is, I think, doing like a postdoc degree, like for math, like theoretical math or something. And so he thinks in like these very strange ways. Like, he just sees the world very differently than anybody that Reagan has come across previously. He talks a lot about hexagons and bees, hence the title, and there's patterns that appear in nature relating to them. And they just have like a lot of very lofty philosophical conversations. And that's kind of how this relationship starts. They meet each other, they're intrigued by one another, and they agree to have 6 conversations with one another. I liked that element, and I was pretty engaged up until about halfway. And then it just kind of like went in a different direction. Like, I was expecting this book to be a kind of a gut punch, and it just never got there emotionally. Like, it felt like she was trying for it to be, but like when the inevitable conflict kind of does come up, I was just kind of like, that's it? Like, okay. I don't know. So this was kind of disappointing. Not that I should have expected a lot, considering I've read Olivia Blake in the past and had very similar feelings. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this author. I want to like Olivia Blake, but just so far it's just not doing it for me. So I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. In all honesty, it's probably more of like a 2.5. But I did enjoy that first half, so I will give her that. This next book would have been a DNF had I not promised my friend Stephanie that I was going to finish it so I could talk to her about it. It's a book that she has loathed for quite some time and apparently needed me to share those feelings with her. And that is Ben and Beatriz by Catalina Gamarra. This is a, I believe, Much Ado About Nothing retelling. Is that the right one? Yes. It's a Shakespeare retelling, a comedy retelling, but not a comedy at all. In fact, it's quite traumatic and triggering, I think, for some readers, probably. We follow Ben and Beatriz, the title characters. They are seniors at Harvard University. Yes, that one, though they act like high schoolers. And they're on spring break at Ben's beach house in Cape Cod. Ben is a cishet white man who is born to this super rich family, and Beatriz is a pansexual, biracial woman with very left-leaning politics. So immediately she hates him. At the beginning of the book, she tells him to F off, capitalist, So that just kind of sets the tone for this romance. It's weird. It is so weird. I think this book is actually mismarketed as a romance because there's some really dark stuff happening in their friend group, and I just could not believe that this was a romance book. Major trigger warnings for like drug use, alcohol abuse, overdosing, all that stuff. Again, very heavy read, weirdly. I was not expecting that. And honestly, Ben and Beatrice's romance sitting at the forefront of this story while all this other stuff is happening in the background just feels so bizarre, and like the juxtaposition of those two storylines is frankly very strange to me. Also, this takes place in early 2017, so right after the 2016 election, and that is referenced to death. I don't know about you, but when I pick up a romance, I'm trying to escape from reality for 250 to 300 pages, and this does not let you. It constantly reminds you of current events and just the political tension in America, especially in 2017. So if all that sounds interesting to you in a romance book, then definitely pick this one up. But I personally gave it 1 star. Again, would have DNF'd if I hadn't been obligated to finish it. So I don't usually give 1 stars because I tend to DNF them beforehand. So this is the rare 1 star for me, but I did not enjoy this book at all. Then I picked up another arc to kind of wrap up the month with, and that was The Adventures of Amina El Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty. And oh my god, this was so fun. This is like the pirate fantasy featuring a 40-something-year-old mom that I didn't know I needed. This was fantastic. Like, just that premise alone, I was like sold. But then you throw in like magical objects and like a wizard antagonist and sea beasts and stuff, and I was enthralled. I will say this book did take me a little while to finish. I don't know if you follow me on Goodreads, but you may have noticed that. That is not a symptom of me not enjoying this book. It's because it's an arc, and those are not flexible for me to read. Like because I can only read them on my Kindle, and I have a hard time with that sometimes. But this was a really fun book, and I loved it a lot. And Amina El Sarafi is like by far my most favorite character that I've read, at least this year. She is so full of personality, and just the way that Shannon Chakraborty chose to write this book in a way that like Amina is sitting down with the scribe and that scribe is like taking down her life story. It suits it so well because Amina's personality really comes through, and there are these like asides with the scribe that are so funny. It makes this character feel so real. And it also like sets her up to be this like living legend type of character. And I just love a fantasy about a murderous mom. I don't know. I had a very similar feeling about Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. I love Orca so much, and Amina is like right up there with her now. So highly recommend. This has tons of adventure, tons of humor. The characters are incredible. It's like Ocean's 11, but like in 15th century, or is it 14th century, Indian Ocean kind of area. And it was so fun. And I feel like I keep saying the word fun, and that really undersells what Shannon Chakraborty did with this book, because it is so well crafted and so well researched and so well written. And the fact that like it doesn't feel stuffy or like just it's incredible. It's such a good book. It's probably one of my favorite books that I've read so far this year, and I highly recommend it. 5 very glowing stars. So those are all the traditional books that I read this month, but I did also read a couple manga if you're interested in hearing about that. First up, I read the first 2 volumes of Romantic Killer. I believe this started off as like a webtoon. They're like fully colored pages, which is very unusual in a manga. And it's also been adapted into an anime that is currently on Netflix. And this is pretty fun. I think there's only going to be 4 volumes, and I think the 3rd volume publishes in the first half of this year. So this is what it's currently out, I believe, at the moment. But we follow a teenager named Anzu who is very content to live her life playing video games, eating chocolate, and hanging out with her cat. And this weird sprite thing comes into her life and yoinks those all away. And she's like, we're gonna find you a boyfriend. And Anzu is like, I don't want a boyfriend. The fairy thing is like, that's too bad. This is my job. I need this paycheck. So all of those things kind of get blipped from her life. Anzu's parents like very suddenly move to America and take the cat with them. She's forced to live by herself and continue attending school while this fairy kind of sets her up into these very like traditional manga anime like meet cute situations with these boys in her life. It's very self-aware of the tropes that it's using. Like Anzu's very quick to like recognize those things and try to actively avoid them because she's basically just living to spite this fairy and avoid falling in love because how dare this fairy come in and mess her up her life. So it's pretty fun. Again, it's very self-aware of the shoujo sort of traditional setups and tropes, but it's silly and it's fun and it's cute and I enjoyed the full color illustrations a lot. I've checked out the first couple episodes of the anime too. It seems like a very close adaptation, so definitely recommend if you like a kind of rom-com of sorts where the protagonist is actively avoiding trying to fall in love. But yeah, it was cute, it was fun. I think I gave both of these volumes like 3.5 stars. Then on Stephanie's recommendation, I picked up Kimini Todoke, From Me to You. This is a pretty, like, classic shoujo manga. I believe this started coming out in, like, the late 2000s. And I remember it from when I was in middle school and high school, like, seeing it around. The setup for this one is that this high schooler, Sawako, is, like, kind of an outcast in her classroom. She's often called Sadako, which is the name of the main character in the Japanese version of The Ring, or like not the main character, but you know, like the ghost girl. And she like for some reason makes people feel very ill at ease, and there are rumors that she can see ghosts and that like she's haunted and stuff like that. And she is so shy, she doesn't know how to put down these rumors, but she ends up becoming friends with the most popular boy in her class, and like they're just so soft and cute, and no one can believe that the two of them are friends, but like her befriending this boy leads to her making other friends and becoming a little bit more well understood. And it's, again, just very soft and cute. This is volume 1. I don't have any of the other volumes at the moment, but I'm willing to check them out. Again, very classic, I think, shoujo manga at this point. I believe there's an anime adaptation. There's also a new live action adaptation coming out, but I think there's also an older one that seems very well loved as well. So it was fun picking it up, and thank you, Stephanie, for recommending it. I believe I gave this 4 stars. All right, and that wraps up my February reading. Like I said, it was a very strange reading month. It kind of had books across the board. I had some 5 stars, I had some DNFs, and a 1 star, which is very rare for me. But yeah, so thank you guys for watching. Please feel free to let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books, what you thought. I'd love to have a conversation about it. And also feel free to check out the links in my bio below to my social media stuff, and follow my channel, like this video, all that jazz. And as always, have a lovely day. Bye.